Want to speak real Korean from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at KoreanClass101.com.
Hello there, Korean learners. In this video, we're going to talk about how not to say I can do something, or how not to say can in Korean. And of course, we'll also talk about can't in the same way. First, a little background on why I'm making this video, why this is an important thing to know. You might be like, oh, I already know how to say that. You can just say, 뭐 할 수 있어요, 먹을 수 있어요. You can just say that, right? And the reason I'm saying no is that when we say that I can do something in English, the meaning is different in Korean. What I mean by that is we use the word can to indicate an ability to do something, whereas in Korean, the form that would translate to can is used in different cases. It implies different things than the simple word can does in English. We'll use a simple example to illustrate the cultural difference, the meaning difference in these, and then some other examples to make it a little more clear. Okay, so the first example is actually one of the first full sentences I think that I learned in Korean that I was able to, say from memory, so I'd memorized it. And I used it one time in real life, and I said to someone, 한국말 할 수 있어요. 한국말 할 수 있어요. You may know this sentence. You may have learned this sentence already as well. And you may know or think that the translation is I can speak Korean, or he can, she can, they can, whatever. The subject is left out, right? That is very common in Korean, that the subject is not included, it's just implied. So when I said it, 한국말 할 수 있어요, people understood that I meant myself, right? Now, the implied meaning of this, literally the meaning, yes, is I can speak Korean. The 수 here in 할 수 있어요 is actually, as far as what I was told, it represents a move in the game of 바둑. And 바둑 is also called go in English, I think. And one move is called one 수, okay? And so in the game of 바둑, there are potentially infinite moves. And if you say you have a 수, then if there is a 수 for something, then there is a move. There is a move that can be made. There is a possibility. So that's kind of what the 수 here means. So 할 수 있어요, 할 수 있다, is indicating that there is, 있다 meaning there is something, the existence of something. There is a 수, and that can be done, and you can attach any verb to the front of that. When Korean people say that they can do something, especially when it's related to a language or a skill or a sport or something like that, it implies that they are a master of it, or near master level in that thing. So it's very ironic and kind of silly that the first sentence I learned in Korean was 한국말 할 수 있어요, because I was implying in a way that I had mastered it. So you might be like, well, okay, how do I tell people that I can speak Korean? The truth is, you don't need to say it if you are speaking Korean. So saying it is going so far as to say, yes, I know Korean. It's maybe similar to saying I know Korean in English. If you say you know Korean, you're indicating some level of mastery of it, right? Some intense, very deep knowledge of it. So that's a similar feeling, actually, as it is in Korean saying 한국말 할 수 있어요. When you say that, you imply that you know Korean, that you are very, very good at it. So this is kind of the cultural background for this, the difference in saying that. If you ever wanted to indicate to someone that you could speak Korean, there are ways to do that. You can ask in the comments, so we can talk about it and see if we can help each other out, because that's not necessarily the topic in this video. So if you're in Korea, or if you're around Korean people a lot, you might have heard them ask you, or they may have asked you, can you eat kimchi? Can you eat spicy food? Can you eat Korean food? When I first heard that, I was like, of course, I can eat anything. I can eat paper if I wanted to, right? Because in English, the can indicates a simple ability to do something. Do you have the simple ability to eat kimchi? Well, of course the answer is yes. I can chew it and swallow it. But the implied meaning, that what the Korean people are thinking when they say 먹을 수 있어? That's what they're thinking. 먹을 수 있어요? 김치를 먹을 수 있어요? That's what they're thinking. That implies, just like the example before, that you know how to eat it. Do you know kimchi? Do you enjoy eating it? Do you frequently eat it? Are you familiar with it? These things are implied when they ask you 먹을 수 있어요, because the 수 there indicates some sort of experience with or mastery of that thing. So this is another example of the same form, and it also illustrates why it doesn't translate very well into English. Koreans are mistranslating that into English. What they mean to say is, do you like kimchi? That would be what we would actually say in that situation. That's what I ask people when I'm curious if they eat it, or if they like it. So let's take another example here, another situation. So let's imagine that someone has asked you if you want to go out to dinner on Friday with them and some friends. In Korea, they don't really have parties because people usually meet outside at restaurants and stuff instead of having house parties like at least we do in the United States. So they'll say something like, "Oh, do you want to go out to dinner on Friday?" Maybe they ask you in Korean. Now the answer, if you want to say yes, I can go, you can say 갈 수 있어요. 갈 수 있어요. You can say that. If you can't go, you might think to say 갈 수 없어요. 갈 수 없어요. So the 갈 수 is 없어요, is not in existence. There is no move for you to make. You cannot go. Now you may think that this is a natural way to answer. It may feel natural to you as an English speaker, but it's actually a little weird. Especially 갈 수 없어요. 갈 수 없어요 sounds very weird to me. It would be better to say 못 가요. 못 가요. Okay? 못 가요. As opposed to 갈 수 없어요 if you can't go. And it would be better to say 가요 or 네 가요 if you are going to go, if you do want to go. So we have these two pairs here. We have 갈 수 없어요 and 갈 수 있어요. And then we have 가요 and 못 가요. 가요 and 못 가요, I think, are more natural, and for the following reason. Going back to what we mentioned before, the 수 here represents some possibility, right? Like we said before, is there the possibility of you eating kimchi? And so, that's why they ask you 먹을 수 있냐? 먹을 수 있냐고? 먹을 수 있어요? And in this situation as well, when they say, can you come out with us on Friday? If you say 갈 수 있어요, you're saying there is the possibility of me going. The possibility for me to go is there. It does exist. Maybe a similarity in English would be if someone answered and you're like, hey, can you come to my party on Friday? And they say, it is possible for me to go. That might be a close translation. The meaning is correct. The meaning does fit the situation, but it sounds weird, right? Because no one really says that, and it's like a little overly official, I guess. So 갈 수 없어요 as well is also weird because you're saying there is no possibility for me going. It is absolutely impossible for me to go. And the more natural way would be to say 못 가요. So this 못 here is actually closer to can't as a word in English. I can't go, 못 가요. That's a more direct translation. And as a result, 가요 is actually closer to I can go. I can go, I'll go, I will go, I'm going to go. All those things are sort of packaged within the phrase there, 가요. So if we take one final example here that's not necessarily related to a person, because right, all of the subjects in all of these examples we've used are I or you, right? So if we take an example where the subject is not a person, this may be a little bit clearer. So let's take the sentence in English. Driving can be dangerous. Driving can be dangerous. Okay, can be dangerous. So you see a can here in the sentence. This in Korean, I believe, at least the translation that feels natural to me, is 운전하는 게 위험할 수 있어요. 위험할 수 있어요. 위험할 수 있어요. 운전하는 게 위험할 수 있어요. Driving, 운전하는 게 운전하기가 위험할 수 있어요. These are a few variations that come to mind for me. Now, here you'll see the form 위험, pronounced, the H kind of gets left out a little bit. 위험할 수 있어요. The su here is there, and it makes sense. This is a natural sentence, I believe, because there is the possibility of driving being dangerous. When you drive, something dangerous might happen. It is possible for that to happen. So this su here is emphasizing that it is possible for something to happen. So when you're making sentences in Korean, when you're thinking about using this form, if you remember this video, and if you're thinking, oh, should I use the su here or not, the question to ask yourself is, am I emphasizing whether something is a possibility or not? Do I want to indicate the possibility? Is there a possibility or is there not? Because keep in mind that the verb that gets attached to this at the end is 있어요 or 없어요, 있다 없다, for something to exist or something to not exist. So you are emphasizing the existence or non-existence of something. So one common mistranslation I see here, this will be the final example, and then I'll let you get back to your YouTubing, is a very common mistake that I see a lot. And I guess you could say it's not really a mistake, it's just a little unnatural. And that is when people want to say, 2 years ago I couldn't speak Korean. 2 years ago I couldn't speak Korean, okay? So that's the sentence. 2년 전에 한국어 할 수 없었어요. So you see the 할 수 없다 in there, and the 없었어요 there, the extra 서, that means that's the past tense, the extra one with the double S on the bottom. So 2년 전에, 2 years ago, literally 2 years before, at 한국말, 한국어. 한국말 is spoken Korean, 한국어 is the Korean language, both are interchangeable. 할 수 없었어요. 할 수 없었어요. This sounds weird to me because the feeling it gives me is that somehow someone put some sort of restriction on you that absolutely did not allow you to speak Korean. It's as if the government, they made some law that said specifically you could not speak Korean, otherwise you would go to jail. Or someone at that time, 2 years ago, they threatened to kill you if you spoke Korean or something like that. There's some very serious or very like binding condition that somehow didn't allow you to speak Korean. So it's similar to saying 2 years ago it was impossible for me to speak Korean. That sounds weird, right? Why was it impossible? You could just, listen to something on YouTube and repeat it out loud and then you're speaking Korean. Why would it be absolutely impossible for you to make the Korean sounds with your mouth? That's weird. So the more natural way, you might be wondering, to say I couldn't speak Korean 2 years ago would be to use, what do you think? Take a second to guess. 못, right? 2년 전에 한국어 못했어요. 2년 전에 한국말을 못했어요. 못했어요. But when pronounced, 못했어요. Okay, so I hope this was helpful, and I know that this is a very common form, so please go ahead and share any questions or any example sentences or ways that you learned this. If you've already learned this and you found this video helpful, please let others know so all of us Korean learners out there can help each other out and get better. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the comments.